and get some cars.
What is up, guys? Thomas with Tab Gaming here, and this is the review for Modern Warfare. Now, if you want my actual initial first impressions of the game, you can go on my website, which will be linked in the description, and I have a written review which gives my first thoughts on the game that I made last weekend when the game came out. But here, since the game's been out for about a week, I figured I would give it an impression since they've tweaked a little bit. First, let's start with the campaign. It's going to be relatively short just because the campaign, in the shortest description possible, is one of the greatest campaigns I've played of Call of Duty, maybe even the best, because it's well put together, the pacing is great. For the most part, the bots are pretty responsive. I played on hardened, so I don't know what normal difficulty like, but on hardened it was difficult, but it felt like it was naturally difficult. It wasn't like they were making it ungodly at that level. Now, veteran, I don't know because I'm not that good, but hardened, you did have to focus a lot more on what you were doing, and it felt like the bots were responding to what you were doing instead of just having a set program. Now, I will say that the campaign could be a tad bit longer, but that's the only little gripe I have about it. But everything else, it's graphically stunning. It looks really nice. I will say the night aspect and just the night vision goggle aspects does make a huge difference. It's really a part of the game, and there are certain parts through the campaign as you play through it where you will see that you got to be really careful, and it changed your playstyle. You got to go a bit slower depending on where you at. There was some parts where you could kind of speed it up a little bit, but the night vision goggles is more than just a gimmick in the game. It's actually incorporated into the storyline quite well, and I think it gave it a more dynamic feel. The characters are really interesting and memorable, which is surprising compared to the last few entries. Even Black Ops 4, which didn't even have a campaign, the characters that you played at in multiplayer weren't even memorable. So I feel like this is going to be refreshing for people that have been away from Call of Duty or have been playing Call of Duty lately and been missing the storyline. Now, I will say that on the single player, there are a lot of Easter eggs and a lot of twists and turns, which is very welcomed. There are some pretty dark sections of the game, like it gets really disturbing at some points, but I will say it stretched you out just enough to get you immersed in the game, but it's not like anything real shocking. I wouldn't say there's even anything to the level of no Russian. There might be like a couple close ones, but there are sections that might come close, but I feel like they were put in there to advance the plot and storyline and not really for shock value. Now, will it shock some people? Yes, but that's not the whole intent of the parts that were put in, because they work really good with the storyline and they make you more involved in the game and have more empathy for the characters and the setting. And I will say how they handled the different locations in the game was pretty nice, because I never feel like in the campaign that you had too long of a section or mission. Everything was changing and you sometimes are kind of getting lost in all the things going on, but it was very interesting to say the least, because they did switch up locations quite a bit and kept you interested in where you were going next and what your mission was. So I would definitely recommend playing the campaign. It's, like I said, one of the best ones in recent years. Now, the next mode I'm going to talk about, it's going to be even shorter than how I talked about the campaign. It's Spec Ops. All I have to say is it feels like they need to work on it really hard. Like, even a week into it, there are missions that are completely broken. The main operator missions are very difficult. You can't change the setting, and all I gotta say, it is frustrating because you can't even really do it unless you have a full squad, and even then, if you have a full squad of people that are at your skill level, you're kind of trying to just ward off enemies that are spawning right behind you. Not even like a good spawn location. They're just popping up where you just mowed them down. You're not really advancing. You're not pushing into enemy lines or anything. And I will say that irritates me quite a bit after playing it a little more of it. It might have some better featured later on, but right now I don't recommend Spec Ops at all. But you may give it a shot and enjoy it by the time this review comes out. So last but not least, we will talk about multiplayer. It's not Call of Duty without a good multiplayer. And this year, I will say it has made some good strides, but going into the first week, you can see that there's a really big camping problem, on top of other glitches that they are going to be fixing here soon within the next week or so. But one of the main complaints I can see is it's very discouraging to people that like to rush, because there's so many camping spots and there's really no way to counter it unless you just know all the spots are automatically pre-aimed around every corner and slowly go through. Because if you're rushing, 9 times out of 10 you're going to get killed, and you may go a game without getting a single kill unless you're just crouched down and pre-aiming every time you turn a corner. Where this build's good for Rainbow Six Siege, but this game is not Rainbow Six Siege. It's still Call of Duty, and the only thing it has that Rainbow Six Siege has is the mounting, and it's not really all that effective except for campers. So I will say, as long as they start fixing this issue, there isn't too much more to complain about for multiplayer. I will say, for comparison to Black Ops 4, it's way better than Black Ops 4 around that time, because Black Ops 4 around release was very dry on the multiplayer content, and it would dry for months. There's already a lot more multiplayer content, and they have good varieties on the modes. I will say that when you look at the game mode, there are some that need some work and adjustment, like the 20 vs 20. They just don't have a good flow to them. Some of the maps need work. I don't know how they would fix it, but just some of the maps can be quite irritating to a point, just because there isn't no 3 lanes. And that's not even the issue. There's just no real flow or any way to really get a groove going on these maps unless you're just camping. But if they just come out with some better maps and they just fix the camping issue somehow, I think that would improve the game and make a lot more people happier. But there are some good points I want to hit on for multiplayer. First is, it can be challenging with the rushing, but the progression system I quite like a lot. Like the missions that they have for multiplayer, it allows you to unlock variants of guns that give you a chance to try out a loadout that includes some attachment you may not have unlocked yet, which is pretty helpful when you're just starting out, because it can make a difference, especially if you're just trying to get a foot in the door, because it's just really rewarding to accomplish these objectives and then get a variant and a calling card and stuff for the work you have done. And while on the topic, the loadout system is a lot better than the picked hidden system, because attachments are separate from your loadout class, and you can have a full class without having to sacrifice too much. So that is the bright side of multiplayer. Overall, this game, it may be a little rough on multiplayer and Spec Ops. Campaign, like I said, is really solid. So I would probably say it's like above average and worth checking out, especially if you want to wait a little bit to see what happens after they update it a few times. I quite enjoy it, but there are definitely some flaws that need to be corrected before you can say it's a really great Call of Duty. But I appreciate you guys stopping by the channel. I hope this review helps you out, and until next time, have a good one.
like to chop them down.